Hello and welcome to our first video lecture. Hope everybody has an okay time transitioning to an online learning format. Shouldn't be too big of a deal, hopefully, for all of you. One nice thing is that you can more or less do it on your own schedule when you have time. If you are having trouble, feel free to reach out to me and let me know what I can try to do for you to help you in whatever way I can. All right, so this video lecture is going to cover Chapter 4. So we covered Chapter 3 a while back in the Exam 1 material. And these next three chapters, 4 through 6, are basically extensions of the supply and demand model that we learned in Chapter 3. So this one covers an extension called Elasticity, okay? So back in Chapter 3, right, we learned about how demand and supply sort of balance the wants and desires of consumers and producers, and when the market's in equilibrium, everybody's happy. All the buyers on the demand side are satisfied, and all the suppliers, all the businesses on the supply side are satisfied. Nobody's left unhappy, sort of in equilibrium. And we saw, when shortages or surpluses exist, those tend to put pressure on the market to sort of head towards equilibrium, right? If we're in a disequilibrium, there's either a shortage or a surplus, and there's pressures there to push prices towards the equilibrium price. And then we also talked about in Chapter 3 how the direction of changes in quantity demanded and quantity supplied result from changes in price. So sort of as a segue, or the next step, I guess, is to talk about how quantities react to price changes in a little bit more detail, and basically that's what elasticity is. It's the sensitivity of consumers and producers to changes in price. So, if you think of the word elasticity, it makes me think of underwear waistbands, right, which are very elastic, so they stretch when you apply a force to them. So an elastic waistband in a piece of underwear is very elastic, right? It responds a lot to that force, right? If you pull on either end of the waistband, and then we'll also talk about inelasticity. So things that are inelastic don't respond very much to forces. So think of it in those terms. But that's basically what we're going to cover in this chapter. So our big questions that we want to be able to answer here are, what is price elasticity of demand? So we're going to see 4 different elasticities. The first one we're going to look at is price elasticity of demand. So we're going to learn what that is, and also what determines price elasticity of demand. The next elasticity we're going to talk about is income elasticity. And we're also going to talk about cross-price elasticity. So that's what the second big question relates to. So how do changes in income, as well as changes in the price of other goods, affect elasticity of demand? And then we're also going to talk about elasticity of supply. So we want to be able to describe what that is. And then we will also talk about how price elasticity of demand and supply relate to one another. So those are our big questions for this chapter. All right, so here's a question for you to kind of get you thinking, get you in the right headspace for this chapter. So think about this. How do you respond when the price of gasoline rises by 10%? Think about that for a second. Now, hopefully you're thinking, well, if price goes up, I'm probably going to buy less gasoline. So you're on the right track there. Remember the law of demand. Price and quantity demanded are inverse to one another. They move in opposite directions. So if price goes up, then quantity demanded goes down. So hopefully you were thinking on that along those lines. Does your answer change if we're talking about a 10% rise in the price of a Big Mac meal? Would you respond? Would your response be bigger in terms of your quantity demanded, or would it be less in terms of your quantity demanded? Take a minute to think about that, and I'll see you in the next video.